Om Shanti, children. A very pleasant good morning to all of you. Steps are being geared up to continue with the teaching and learning process. So let's continue the same with the new chapter, Lost Spring by Anish Jung. Before we proceed ahead, let's know about Anish Jung, who was a prolific Indian woman writer, and she was born in Rourkela and studied in Hyderabad and United States. Actually, she hails from an aristocratic background and an aristocratic family. She came into the limelight with the publication of Unveiling India in 1987, which is a travel diary focusing on the interviews with women. She is not only a writer but also journalist and a columnist. And it's a nice time and right time to start with the chapter Lost Spring. Although it's not a spring season, yet the phase of childhood, which is the most beautiful phase of the life, is the spring of the life of anybody. As spring represents the season of color, happiness, joy, so is the childhood. But in the story, Anish Jung talks about the underprivileged or have-nots. You must be knowing about one of the famous movies called as Traffic Signals, where you can see they lack basic amenities of life and above all their basic education also. Even in the movie, recently came movie Super 30, there the children had lost their childhood at a very tender age. Means their spring period is consumed in the web of poverty. There are two stories in it. One talks about the place Simapuri and other about the place Firozabad. The author unveils the utter destitution of rag pickers of Simapuri and the bangle makers of Firozabad. Two protagonists are there. One is Sahib-e Alam, another is Mukesh. They lost their season of bloom, their springtime, their childhood because of the burden of poverty and illiteracy. The story highlights the miserable plight of the thousands of poor people whose life is completely marred due to abject poverty and thoughtless traditions also. Thoughtless tradition because in spite of spending quite a good deal on their work, good deal of time on their work, in spite of working extremely hard, they accept their poverty and exploitation as their destiny. The first story begins with the line, "Sometimes I find a rupee in the garbage." The author in fact comes across Sahib every morning, who was a young boy of school-going age, and he had left his home in Dhaka, Bangladesh. He had come to the big city in search of his livelihood. Now, the author asks him about going to school, and she also asks at the same time why he does that rag picking. The boy replies that he has nothing else to do than rag picking, so he does that. And the other thing also, he had informed that there was no school in his neighborhood. Now, half jokingly, the author asked whether he would come in case she started one, and he smiled and agreed to come. But afterwards, narrator forgot. What did she talk with? That boy. After a few days, he ran up to the author and asked if the school was ready. Now the author felt quite embarrassed at having made a false promise, which could not be meant, which was in fact not meant. The author here focuses on the perpetual state of poverty of these children, never-ending state of poverty of these children, these rag pickers. When she mentions the young children engaged in rag picking, not wearing footwears, and the author, it seems, she gets the answer on her own. She thinks that it was because of lack of money, but when she asked one of them, then he told that it was a tradition to stay barefoot. She also here describes about the irony in Sahib's name. Sahib's full name was Sahib-e-Alam, and Sahib was not at all knowing. He has no idea about the meaning of his name, which is directly in contrast to what Sahib is in reality. He is in fact a rag picker. People of Simapuri are in fact squatters. Wherever they find their food, they pitch their tents. Now, the children grow in them and they become partner in the survival. Survival for the elder through this garbage picking is very, very important. They cannot do anything than to do the rag picking to have a survival. But there is a different meaning for the garbage for these children. The different meaning is that the garbage is wrapped in wonder for them. This is a kind of bonanza. This is a kind of lottery for them. There is always in fact a hope of finding more and more. But Simapuri is always in a hell for them. It is in fact a hell for them. No sewage, no drainage, no running water. It is unimaginable that it is a part of Delhi. Simapuri is a part of Delhi. Therefore, a day Sahib started working in a tea stall. He took a job at a tea stall, but he was not at all happy over there because he was no longer his own master. He had to work under somebody. Although he earned, yet he was not at all satisfied. The steel canisters seems a burden. He might have to work for longer hours also at his tender age. Thus, you can see in this story, in the first story, Sahib lost the charm of the spring in his life. The next story will be about Mukesh in the next video.